The House Judiciary Committee chamber buzzed with anticipation as Byron Donalds leaned into his microphone, his voice dripping with condescension as he addressed Jasmine Crockett directly. "I'd like Representative Crockett to explain to this committee why she believes Black Americans are somehow incapable of obtaining identification to vote." The Florida Republican's trap seemed perfectly set, his rehearsed question designed to generate a damaging soundbite. But Crockett didn't take the bait. Instead, she calmly opened her tablet, her fingers scrolling through documents as Donalds continued his theatrical performance. Then she looked up, locked eyes with him, and spoke 7 words that would destroy his entire political façade. "I have your Heritage Foundation meeting notes." The confrontation that would end Byron Donalds' credibility as a voice for Black conservatives began in a packed House Judiciary Committee hearing on the Voting Rights Advancement Act. Donalds, one of only 4 Black Republicans in Congress, had positioned himself as the GOP's shield against accusations of racist voter suppression, using his identity to legitimize policies that civil rights groups condemned as modern-day Jim Crow. Jasmine Crockett, the freshman Democrat from Texas, had earned a reputation as someone who refused to let anyone hide behind identity politics while advancing harmful agendas. A former civil rights attorney and public defender, she brought courtroom precision to congressional hearings, treating each confrontation like a cross-examination where facts mattered more than political theater. This morning's hearing would prove why that approach was so devastating. The hearing had started predictably enough. Democrats argued that new voting restrictions disproportionately impacted communities of color. Republicans countered that election integrity measures were colorblind and necessary. Then Donalds decided to make it personal. Rising from his seat with practiced confidence, he launched into what his staff had clearly prepared as a defining moment. "My Democratic colleagues want you to believe that requiring identification to vote is racist," he began, his voice carrying across the wood-paneled chamber. "They want you to believe that Black Americans, unlike every other group in this country, are somehow uniquely incapable of meeting basic voting requirements." He paused for effect, turning to face Crockett directly. Representative Crockett has been particularly vocal about this alleged suppression. I wonder if she could explain to us why she has such little faith in Black voters' ability to participate in our democracy. The gallery, packed with civil rights activists and journalists, stirred uneasily. Several Democratic members started to object, but Crockett raised her hand slightly, signaling she would respond. Donalds, emboldened by her apparent willingness to engage, continued his assault. "You see, this is the soft bigotry of low expectations. Democrats need Black voters to feel victimized. They need us to believe we're helpless without their protection." His voice rose as he gestured dramatically. "I refuse to accept that narrative. I refuse to tell Black families in my district that they're too incompetent to obtain a driver's license, too helpless to find their polling place, too dependent to exercise their constitutional rights without special assistance." Committee Chair Jerry Nadler gavelled for order as murmurs rippled through the room, but Donalds pressed on, clearly believing he was winning. "The truth is, Representative Crockett and her colleagues profit politically from keeping Black Americans angry, dependent, and convinced that racism lurks behind every corner. They don't want Black success stories. They don't want Black conservatives. They want Black victims." He leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression, confident he had just delivered a viral moment for conservative media. Crockett remained silent for several long seconds, her eyes never leaving her tablet screen. The silence stretched uncomfortably as cameras zoomed in on her calm expression. Then she began to speak, her voice steady and methodical. "Mr. Donalds mentions his district. Let's talk about his district. Since January 2020, there have been 43 polling location changes in Florida's 19th congressional district." She looked up, making direct eye contact with him. 31 closures, 12 new openings. Would the gentleman like to guess the demographic breakdown of those changes? Donald shifted slightly, his confidence wavering as Crockett continued. 73% of the closures were in majority Black precincts. 83% of the new locations opened in predominantly white neighborhoods. The average distance a Black voter in your district must travel to vote increased by 4.7 miles. The average distance for white voters decreased by 2.1 miles. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "These aren't opinions, Mr. Donalds. These are facts from your own Secretary of State's office." The room had gone completely silent except for the scratching of reporters' pens and the software of C-SPAN cameras adjusting their focus. Donalds attempted to interject, claiming the closures were based on facility issues and budget constraints, but Crockett was already pulling up new documents on her screen. Facility issues, she repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. That's interesting because I have here a series of emails between your district office and state election officials. The blood began draining from Donald's face as she continued. Your legislative director wrote, and I quote, "We need to consolidate urban voting locations while expanding access in the suburbs. Our base needs convenience. Their base needs security." Gasps erupted from the gallery as Democratic members leaned forward in their seats. Republican members suddenly found their phones fascinating, avoiding eye contact with their colleague. Donald stammered something about emails being taken out of context, but Crockett was just getting started. Context, she mused. Let's provide some context then. On February 15th, you attended a closed-door meeting at the Heritage Foundation. The topic, according to the agenda I've obtained, was securing electoral integrity through strategic access management. She pulled up another document on her tablet, angling it so the cameras could catch its official Heritage Foundation letterhead. Would you like me to read the meeting notes, Mr. Donalds? The part where you suggested that limiting urban turnout through strategic resource allocation was preferable to direct voter challenges? Or perhaps the section where you proposed closing DMV offices in what you called problematic precincts while expanding hours in reliable neighborhoods. Donald's face had transformed from confident to panicked. He grabbed his microphone, his voice cracking slightly as he accused Crockett of fabricating documents. These are lies, manufactured evidence designed to silence black conservative voices, he protested, but his words rang hollow as Crockett methodically continued her presentation. She pulled up a PowerPoint slide that had apparently been used in the Heritage meeting, showing a map of Florida with certain precincts marked in red. The title read Optimization Targets, and every red zone corresponded to a majority black neighborhood. The devastating precision of Crockett's attack became clear as she revealed the full scope of what she had uncovered. There were contractor invoices showing that functioning polling locations in black neighborhoods were closed for repairs that were never scheduled. There were meeting minutes where Donald specifically requested that early voting sites near historically black colleges be relocated to areas with limited public transportation. There were even recordings transcripts where he discussed the need to protect the integrity of our coalition by ensuring that low-information voters face appropriate verification challenges. Committee Democrats began shouting for a formal investigation as Republicans desperately tried to move to recess. But Crockett wasn't finished. She had saved her most damaging revelation for last. Mr. Donalds asked why I believe black voters need protection, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. I don't believe they need protection from voting requirements. I believe they need protection from elected officials who use their black skin as camouflage while systematically dismantling their access to the ballot box. She stood up, commanding the room's attention completely. You see, Mr. Donalds, there's a special place in history for people like you. Not the place you think you're earning as a pioneering black conservative, but the place reserved for those who collaborated in their own people's oppression. You're not the first black face to be used to legitimize racism, and sadly, you won't be the last. But today, in this room, your complicity has been exposed. The chamber erupted in chaos. Civil rights leaders in the gallery stood and applauded while Republican members frantically huddled around Donalds, who sat frozen in his seat, his mouth opening and closing without producing words. Crockett gathered her documents calmly, but she had one final devastating blow to deliver. Oh, and Mr. Donalds, she said, her voice somehow carrying over the commotion, that meeting at Heritage? Your chief of staff recorded it. He sent me the audio file yesterday. He said his conscience couldn't handle what you were doing to your own people anymore. The revelation sent shockwaves through the political establishment. Donald's own staff had turned whistleblower, providing Crockett with the smoking gun that proved systematic voter suppression targeting black communities. As security tried to restore order and the committee chair banged his gavel repeatedly, Donald suddenly stood and rushed from the chamber, pushing past reporters who shouted questions at his retreating figure. The image of him fleeing while Crockett calmly returned to her seat would become the defining visual of his political downfall. Within minutes, #CrockettExposesByron was trending globally on social media. The video clips spread like wildfire across platforms, with millions watching Crockett's methodical destruction of Donald's credibility. Political commentators across the spectrum struggled to process what they had witnessed. MSNBC's Joy Reid called it the most thorough exposure of political collaboration in systemic racism I've ever seen. Even Fox News contributors found themselves unable to defend Donalds, with one admitting off-air that she had the receipts, and they were damning. The Heritage Foundation immediately released a statement distancing themselves from Donalds and claiming the meeting was unofficial and not representative of their values. Republican leadership canceled Donalds' scheduled appearances on Sunday morning shows, recognizing the toxic liability he had become. Meanwhile, Crockett's congressional office was flooded with calls from constituents and civil rights organizations praising her fearless confrontation. The NAACP announced they would use the exposed documents in upcoming voting rights lawsuits, calling them irrefutable evidence of intentional discrimination. By evening, 3 more whistleblowers from Republican congressional offices had reached out to Crockett's team, offering additional evidence of coordinated voter suppression efforts. The Department of Justice announced they would review the documents for potential civil rights violations. Donalds attempted to release a video response, but was widely mocked for its desperate attempts to reframe the narrative. His claim that he was fighting for real black empowerment fell flat when contrasted with his own words about limiting urban turnout. The aftermath extended far beyond the immediate political implications. Universities began using the confrontation as a case study in how identity politics could be weaponized against minority communities. The term "pulling a Donalds" entered political lexicon, referring to using one's minority status to advance policies harmful to that same minority group. Young black conservatives distanced themselves from him, recognizing the damage his exposure had done to their credibility. Several announced they were reconsidering their political alignments after seeing the evidence Crockett presented. Major voting rights organizations launched campaigns highlighting the systematic nature of the suppression Crockett had exposed. The evidence she presented became central to multiple lawsuits challenging voting restrictions across the South. Legal scholars noted that her methodical presentation created an undeniable record that would be difficult to dispute in court. The recording from Donalds' chief of staff was particularly valuable as it provided direct evidence of discriminatory intent. In the days that followed, more revelations emerged from the documents Crockett had obtained. There were strategies for purging voter rolls in predominantly black precincts, plans for reducing voting hours in urban areas while extending them in suburbs, and even discussions about placing off-duty law enforcement at polling sites in black neighborhoods to create an intimidating presence. Each new detail further destroyed any remaining credibility Donalds might have retained. His own constituents began calling for his resignation, with protests organized outside his district offices. This moment in the House Judiciary Committee chamber will be remembered as more than just a political takedown. It was a moment when preparation met opportunity, when facts defeated rhetoric, and when one woman's refusal to let identity be used as a shield against accountability changed the national conversation about voter suppression. As Jasmine Crockett said in an interview days later, Byron Donalds thought his black skin would protect him from scrutiny while he helped dismantle black voting rights. He forgot that some of us keep receipts. He forgot that some of us remember history. And he forgot that betraying your own people for political power always comes with a price. Today, he paid it in full,